I'm rooting for the Texans. I think they're going to kill it this draft.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new episode of The Lead. Your host, as always, Harley Dugan, here today with a very special guest in front of me. A lot of Houston fans might not know who Joe DeLeone is, but he is from the Believe Network. He hosts his own show, The Joe and Rufino Show. Make sure to let us know who you are and where to follow you, Joe.
Yeah, you can catch me on Twitter at Joe DeLeone. And then you mentioned the Rufino and Joe show, as well as my draft content that I do, which is the First Team. And you can catch that on YouTube. And Harley, I appreciate you having me on. The Texans had a pretty good offseason so far, and they could really cap things off with a good draft.
Yeah, man, I'm glad you're talking about their Texans. We are definitely Houston forward on this YouTube channel. It's all Houston all the time here on The Lead. So again, appreciate you coming on and spending some few minutes with me. So let's get into it, man. Texans, man, it is surreal where it's came along this road, this journey as a Texans fan, and anybody that has seen the outside perspective, I could just imagine how it looks for them. But it has been gravy over here as a Texans fan. And I just want to know, what is your thoughts right now from the Houston Texans, just what it seems like a slam dunk kind of offseason for them? Do you share that same perspective, or what do you got for us?
Yeah, I definitely think that it shouldn't be a hot take to say that the Texans hit a home run with the way that they approached this offseason. They were aggressive. I think a lot of times when teams are in this window where they realize their young quarterback was ready to contribute at a high level way earlier than sooner, not always do these teams say, okay, we need to put all of the chips in to the middle of the table. We need to put ourselves in a position to win right now, because in 4 years, when said quarterback's new contract is up, we're not going to be able to afford spending all this big money, all these draft picks on going and getting premier players. I mean, we see that right now with the Buffalo Bills, where they're getting rid of everybody. Quite literally, one of those guys that they got rid of was Stephon Diggs. But I think it's really great that, one, for me, I like that they went after Danielle Hunter. I think that they needed somebody to play off of Will Anderson. I thought that maybe they could have drafted somebody in the first round, but this edge class isn't exactly as talented as we've typically seen. So there's not a lot of surefire guys. So to get someone like Hunter is going to be huge for the defense in order for them to take that next step of being good and feisty to being one of the elite defenses in the NFL. And then Stephon Diggs, I mean, that is a fantastic move, as you already got tremendous production from Nico Collins and from Tank Dell, who was a rookie this past year. You now have that premier number one guy, and hopefully Diggs meshes well with the current group and everybody gets along and things don't sour the way that they did with the Buffalo Bills. But he is the type of guy that is going to command a lot of attention from opposing defenses, opposing secondaries, that is only going to open things up more for Collins and for Tank Dell to take that next step forward. So as you said, and as I'm saying right now, it is a home run. They could not have approached this any better. I compare it to the Rams, where it's, F the picks, go get as many guys as you can, and, go for the players that that are sure things.
You've compared it to the Rams. National media people, I've heard, I forgot who it is, it's escaping my mind right now, but they compared it to the second year Cincinnati Bengals with Joe Burrow, and just the transformation they made to get into what was the eventual Super Bowl run against the LA Rams. Okay, cool. So check mark, 2 teams that were in the Super Bowl. I would love for that to happen for my Houston Texans, as the rest of the city would love that too. You got any Houston bias, any Houston ties you got for us?
No, it's one of the few areas that I don't. But I will say, though, it's one of the places, or one of the teams rather, that I've been really excited to watch. I don't know, maybe it's because of my draft bias. I just love it when teams that have young cores find ways to be successful early. And I was a really big Will Anderson fan. I thought he was really overthought last process. I liked CJ Stroud, and I was excited that he took such a quick step forward. So I'm rooting for him. Right now, they're my favorite team in the AFC South because of how aggressive they've been and how exciting they've been.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the AFC South. Let me get into that real quick. Houston Texans won the division this previous year. Did you see anybody else in the AFC South that you think could knock off the AFC South champs from last year? Did anybody you think moved up in any kind of way? Or do you think it's the Texans again going into next year?
I think it's absolutely, if you compare all of them and just write them down on paper, the Texans are clearly the favorite to re-win the division in 2024. I think that the Jaguars, if they have a good draft, can really compete for that spot. And I think that that is where the most contention is going to be. I can't put a lot of faith in the Titans just yet, especially because, frankly, I hated the move that they had of signing Calvin Ridley to the deal that they did. I think that that is not going to pan out as they hope. I think he's a fine receiver, but it's just such an overcommitment to a receiver who's been really inconsistent. And then the Colts are going to be a bit before they really get to their full stride. But I think in 2 years, they'll be that type of team that really becomes hard to keep up with if Anthony Richardson could play to his ceiling. But I don't see a way that the Texans don't end up being that leader and, the team that is consistently winning or at least competing as the favorite for the AFC South.
You talk about the draft, some prospects that are coming in. The Texans are at 42-59. Originally, they were at 23. Now, a lot has changed from that day to now. How did you feel about us trading down 19 spots? How was that feeling?
Yeah, I think it was a great decision because you're a team, as again, we're talking about here, wanting to be in a win now position. They are a team that needs to have as many picks as possible to maybe not go after and get a guy that's going to be a project that you're going to develop into a starter in a couple of years. You need guys that are going to start now and that are going to contribute now. And having 2 second-round picks, I think, sets them up for that. They also were able to go and get Stephon Diggs, as we've discussed. So for them to get that second rounder and the other capital from that trade out, I think is big for them to accomplishing their goal. They're not moving too far back. And this is a class where there's a ton of day 2 talent in the second and third round that is good enough to start, way better than we typically see. I think there's going to be a number of guys that they could pick that could be really important players on the roster.
I'm glad you mentioned it. D'Amico and Nick Caserio have both in separate interviews have mentioned that they are ecstatic about the talent that is going to be available in day 2 for them at 42-59. With the deep, rich talent at the offensive line position, specifically the tackle position, as well as wide receiver, who do you think could fall for us at 42 that, oh crap, maybe they get someone here at 42. Maybe they even trade up if they're willing to. Nick Caserio is known for making his trades. Who do you think could fall for the Houston Texans and could fit what they're doing right now?
I think that some of the names that immediately come to mind that fit some of these needs, one at tackle, Kingsley Somatea from BYU or Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma. They could go in the first round. They could end up sliding. I think that it would really behoove the Texans to make a move and take one of those guys if they're on the board because of the unsettled tackle situation and just the general lack of consistent protection for CJ Stroud. I like the idea of McKinley Jackson, the Texas A&M defensive tackle. I think that he would fit nicely in the interior. He is a space eater. He's got a very quick first step. And then one who I think has a lot of potential to be like an, oh my God, how did this guy slide? And then you're talking about if they do trade up to go get him. Kool-Aid McKinstry from Alabama has been a bit hot and cold in his draft projection. I think he's a first-round pick, and I think he's going to be one. But if for whatever reason he slides out and some of these other corners go before him, he's somebody I would 1,000% trade up for.
Do you believe there's just not a lot of faith in Titus Howard? He was playing left guard, but he should be moving right back to right tackle. They did extend him last year as well, too. Didn't play his natural position, going back to right tackle, who at tackle had solid performance there. Laramie Tunsil still on the team, still arguably top 5 left tackle in the NFL. I'm a little surprised he said tackle. What's up with that?
Yeah, I think that Titus Howard has underwhelmed a bit, and he was overdrafted at the time that he was picked. I think he's a fine player. He might actually probably be a little bit better off playing in the interior because of his struggles out at tackle. I just look at it being a situation where your offensive line was so inconsistent last year. it doesn't hurt you to add competition to the room, and then you can shuffle around bodies and go from there. I think it's if a guy has enough experience playing tackle and struggling at it, it becomes a certain point where it might be time to bump that guy inside and then try to get somebody else who you get a fresh, clean start, a blank slate. And I look at Guyton and I look at Kingsley Somatea as these physically gifted guys that could be worked on and developed, that are a little bit more raw, that could eventually become really good starters.
A lot of Texans fans would be shocked if an offensive lineman is the pick there at 42. I would be one of them. I really would. Kool-Aid McKinstry is interesting. I like the name. Love it fits both BPA as well as draft need for the Texans. Secondary is a big, eyesore, as well as the interior defensive line. You mentioned McKinley Jackson. A lot of fans are really wanting Tavondre Sweat. How do you see his fit here in Houston, if there is one? Let me know.
If I'm taking him, it's not going to be until somewhere on day 3. I don't think that he is an every down defensive tackle. I think he is rather an early down run stopping player, and there's value in that, but not value that that's worth spending for me in the second or third round. You're going to draft the defensive tackle. It should be somebody that is going to contribute often, and that is going to be an every down player. But right now, he's just not at the physical profile or the stamina to play all 3 downs. And he even didn't play all the time at Texas. I mean, during the Sugar Bowl, he was taken off the field multiple times in a lot of passing situations by Washington. So I think that somewhere on day 3 makes a lot of sense, but I would not touch him on day 2.
Interesting. A lot of upset Texans fans hearing that one as well. I think there's a lot of crossover between Longhorn and Texans fans. So Austin and Houston, who knows, the marriage. With that being said, the Houston Texans draft needs, at least in my opinion, defensive lineman, someone in the secondary, and linebacker. Now, I mentioned linebacker because I had Jordan Reed on the YouTube channel just a few weeks ago, ESPN draft analyst. And I asked him about if there's any availability at 42 for Edgerrin Cooper. And I would absolutely love Edgerrin Cooper at 42. He said he's not sure he will be there at 42, but said that D'Amico would absolutely gush over him and called him his Fred Warner for D'Amico Ryan's defense. Do you think there is a world where Edgerrin Cooper either falls to 42 for the Texans, or do you think the Texans have to trade up and get him?
I think there's certainly a world where he could be in play, and I'm not in love with the idea of trading up to go get a linebacker in this class. I think there's a couple other options if they miss out on him. I really like Junior Colson from Michigan. I think he could play multiple linebacker positions in a defense, but I'm a big Edgerrin Cooper fan as well. I think he's a crazy good athlete. He flies all over the field, and I like not a direct comparison to Fred Warner, but the way that he could be utilized for D'Amico Ryan's just pure athlete, really physical player that maybe needs a little bit of reeling in on his decision-making and a little bit more coaching for him to take that next step. So I love that idea. I think he could certainly be in play. I don't think teams are really going to be in a rush to take linebackers. I find that interesting that Jordan said that he doesn't think he'll be there. And I love Jordan's work, and that kind of intrigues me that he might think that there could be an early run on linebackers.
I think he was just super high on him. I think on his big board, he had Edgerrin Cooper as his linebacker 1, compared to others having Peyton Wilson. Some had Junior Colson, as you mentioned. So he has him as LB1. So I assume he expects him to go a little higher. So I guess that's what the perspective is. We're running low on time with you, Joe. I know you are Nick Caserio. You're the Houston Texans. Pick 42 and 59. It's day 2. It's your day. It's your time to shine. Who do you got for the Houston Texans at 42 and 59?
See, I've completely got myself hyped up on linebackers now that you brought this up. I think if Edgerrin Cooper is there, I'm taking Edgerrin Cooper, or I'm taking Junior Colson. And then at 59, there are, I think, 3 defensive tackles that I like the idea of. I really like the idea of taking McKinley Jackson from Texas A&M. I like Michael Hall Jr. from Ohio State, but I don't think he's going to be on the board. But if he is, I am running to the podium low to the ground, very disruptive, great pass rush upside. And then I also really like Brandon Dorlus from Oregon, who his frame is malleable enough where I think he could play different spots along the defensive line and could be a really versatile piece for with what DeMeco Ryans likes to use in defensive tackle. So those to me would be the two priorities. You mentioned that linebacker or in defensive tackle, and that's kind of been the main focus for me. If either any of those guys are on the board, I would really be aggressive in trying to make moves to get those players.
Any person in as a safety, Jordan Reed mentioned he didn't have a top 60 safety. That's what he had mentioned. I was pretty shocked. There was no one on the top 60. Who do you think could be available there?
I had one top 50 safety, and that was Cameron Kitchens. I would absolutely take Cameron Kitchens. I think he is a super volatile prospect in terms of just conversation because his athletic testing didn't match the tape on the field. But man, if you're looking for a ball hawking free safety who's going to come down and hit people, that's the guy I want. I think he would absolutely be. His stock might have slid enough that the Texans could get a steal out of taking him in the third round. So I'm all in on Cameron Kitchens. I just posted a clip for my show today, though, of me and Ryan, my co-host Brian Roberts, talking about him. I would absolutely take him in the third round. He's my one safety, the only one that was worthy of getting a top 50 grade.
Well, Joe, I appreciate you coming on. I know we are running low on time for you. Thank you for giving us the insight. Thank you for talking some Houston Texans football. Let the people know where to find you.
Of course, you can catch me on Twitter at Joe DeLeone, and then search up the First Team or Hack City on YouTube to catch the video version of the show. And we appreciate you having me on, Harley. It was great getting to catch up, and I'm rooting for the Texans. I think they're going to kill it this draft.
You know, I've got two national media guys. Joe is rooting for the Texans, and Jordan Reed is a big Houston fan because he's a big Rockets fan. So shout out to both of y'all. Y'all are both Texans fans. I make people come on the show and I make them leave as Texans fans. This is awesome. All right, man. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. As always, guys, go Astros, go Rockets, go Texans. You have a blessed day.